Love, that ever-flowing liquid fire of light, ever-expanding and illuminating truth, which is always revealed with wisdom, a spiritual nutrient necessary for vitality that is maintained through selflessness, a filter of ether that aids purity, which is love. Love, a limitless paper lantern floating into infinity on the intentions and actions of initiates of the mysteries. All right, welcome everybody. We have Linda Summers with us today. Linda, how are you doing?
I'm doing terrific today. I've been kind of a whirl and a swirl in this eclipse energy. And with Mercury retrograde, it's been kind of a wild ride in communication and timeliness. But I'm feeling really good and been very excited about this moment in time to communicate with you.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I've been looking forward to it as well. You talking about Mercury retrograde and the communication made me think of that Led Zeppelin song, Communication Breakdown, or whatever.
Yes.
Kind of like what we were chatting about before we started recording. That's what I've been going through, so I can relate.
Yes, I would imagine most everybody's going through it in one way or another. That's usually the way it is with the collective consciousness.
That's a valid point.
Mm-hmm.
Very first question is, what are you grateful for?
You know, I thought about this one a lot. I was thinking I would love to be able to say, hey, I'm grateful for everything, but I'm really not. I have two forms of gratitude. The first form is what I call the easy gratitude, like things that very quickly come into my life and are beautiful and loving and, you know, just kind of juice up life. Wonderful people like yourself and my honey, my family, the beauty here of Sedona, some wonderful cats I've had, opportunities that have come my way in my lifetime for spiritual work, and I've been doing this for 42 years now. And the stuff I'm not initially grateful for is all the hard stuff, you know, going through the challenges, the lessons, the not fun surprises, the things that are really difficult. And yet, as I get through those over the years and I look back, I am grateful for everything, because each part of it was a part of bringing me to the moment where we are now and providing wonderful learning experiences and opportunities to go more and more into higher consciousness.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah, learning to appreciate the difficult parts in life is one of the harder things to do, and I'm not successful at maintaining it all the time, but I've said it before on this podcast where I've said you need shit and storms for things to grow. So
Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
maybe not the most elegant way, but it's a good description of
Yeah, I like that. It's right to the point.
Yeah. What quotes do you feel most moved by, and can you explain what they mean to you?
Oh, I hope I can. There's one by William Blake. He was an English poet back in the early to mid 1800s. He was part of the Romance poets, and not necessarily romance in the way that we think about it, but a sense of love of life and love of nature. And in his poem, From the Auguries of Innocence, which shows the polarities of life, the light and dark, it's the one that starts to see a world in a grain of a sand and a heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. And to me, that's a very poetic way to describe quantum physics and the way I look at life, which is everything is happening right now. Everything is within us. And if you look at a grain of sand, probably everything is in there too. Sand being like a little orb of electromagnetic information. And so that one has always moved me to be able to see the interconnectedness of all of life and kind of the hologram. You know, there are things that are so tiny that it can be difficult to perceive, and yet they're very whole and they're part of the greater mirroring effect of life. So that one has often come back to me, and It just kind of makes me sigh. And also when I think back to that time, I love seeing the wisdom keepers who have come through time, and I feel like he was one of them.
Mm.
All that paradox of life stuff. And that near the end of the poem, it says, "Man was made for joy and woe. And when this we rightly know, through the world we safely go."
Mm.
And I don't think of safety as being, the ultimate safety, like homeland security and everything, but just an essence of being a bit more in a sense of spiritual control of our lives, having that safety net where we can just know that we're linked up to the spiritual realms no matter what happens.
Mm.
And then I have another quote. I just love the indigenous people always have, and this one is from Chief Seattle of the Salish tribe. And they're from British Columbia, Washington, and Oregon. And he says, if all the animals were gone, men would die from a great loneliness of spirit. And I have such love and respect for the animal kingdom, both out in nature and personally domesticated animals. And that always has touched my heart very, very much. I think animals are a higher consciousness that we don't always give them credit for being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they communicate with us. Out here in Sedona, on my land at the edge of the forest, I'm always looking for the messages. As an example, I had a hawk that started hanging out. And it would talk to me in the morning when I was having my morning coffee. And I noticed it was always in the direction of the north, which is spiritual messages. So I would always say, okay, hawk, I hear you. What messages do you have for me? Either tell me now or tell me in my dreams or tell me sometime today. And then right after the hawk moved out of this area, and this was just a couple months ago, I saw a huge snake going across the land. And it was not a rattlesnake. I've seen them here before. This was a very benevolent snake, a king snake. And I stood there and I said, thank you, King, for being here. You're telling me my life is experiencing a transformation, and it's not going to be as harsh as if a rattlesnake was here and was going to, bite me. And so I honored it. So that type of thing. I'll notice what direction the bluebirds are in the morning when they speak to me, because they speak of the medicine wheel of life. And like this morning, they were in the direction of the west, which is letting go and allowing what's called the shaman's death. And a lot of this is from my training as a shaman, and I think from past life experiences as well.
I liked your quotes a lot. It's interesting you mentioned the one about animals, because prior to our chat, I actually went to the local mall and I walked around just to kind of check out the aquarium, and I was looking at all these different fish in there, and I just thanked the mysteries, the universe, whatever you want to call it, for creating all these different creatures to exist with and to be company, basically. So it's really a very unique synchronicity to have that quote come up within hours of saying that to the animals.
Yes, I love that. I love synchronicities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're always fun to have, I feel like. So the next question is probably one of my favorite ones. Could you explain who you are and what you do? Because there's no way I can explain somebody as good as they can explain themselves.
Okay. Well, I'm a lot about energy, and that's probably why I've been living in Sedona for 25 years. And for 42 years, I've been, in effect, a kind of counselor or therapist or healing essence for people, receiving energy, sending energy out, and going into a connection with other people, soul to soul, so that we can access our higher wisdom. And that's what I'm about in general. I've done it in a lot of different ways over time. Initially, I think I was kind of a counselor for some of my family and friends when I was younger. And then I was a family counselor licensed in California for 15 years and was given the gift of Reiki from a beloved friend of mine, and traveled and taught that when I left California for another, 10, 12 years. And here in Sedona, I went then into a phase of having a spiritual tour company. I just love doing that. Took people out to the vortex sites. We would sit and meditate. I would give them Reiki healing energy and read their auras. And we would go into that wisdom keeping of the higher self or the soul. And currently, I'm not doing much work on the land, a little bit like you and I did, a medicine circle on the land. But I'm doing a lot of phone readings and that type of connecting with people. And I send them energy, and once again we connect soul to soul, and it's a wonderful life.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I definitely know that my experience with you in Sedona was something that I cherished. And it's funny because when I went back through and edited it in middle of July, end of July, whenever it was, and actually like looked back at some of the things you said, it was really profound how much of that kind of stuff came true in some ways, like the wealth thing. From building up my business, my grandparents, they pretty much gave my mom and I most of their inventory that they used to have or whatever. And you had said that I would get some kind of like donation or something of X amount of dollars. And it's funny because like, it wasn't really a cash donation that I got. I got stuff that's worth cash, but then the trick of it is the fact that I have to do work to actually get the money for it, which with my personal story is actually exactly what I need to do, because if things are given to me, I don't appreciate it. I take it for granted, and I like misuse those resources. But if I have to work for it, price it, do all this research, put work into creating stuff with it, I'm going to be very, I don't want to say frugal, but maybe aware of how it's being used and what's coming in and going out with it. So it was like, I got the exact experience that I needed.
Oh, don't we always, though? I love the way the Rolling Stones in that song, you don't always get what you want, but you get what you need.
Yeah. That song's always been profound for me, although sometimes it pisses me off because I want what I want when I want it. I don't need to do this. I understand that I should, but I don't want to. And then that resistance normally makes it that much more uncomfortable and difficult of a lesson.
Yes, I've always felt that I was in a kind of a spiritual squeeze play in terms of money. I've never been totally without. There was one point where I had $5. And I was walking in Laguna that day with my $5 where I was living in California, and I heard my inner voice say, "You will never be this poor again." But years later, I had at one point only $100 and my car that was paid for. So I thought, okay, we're stepping up. But what those squeeze plays have done for me is they keep me on my path. Because I would love to be just kind of lazy and not do anything. And so money is a motivator for me to go into my creativity and continue being who I need to be on this planet to fulfill my purpose.
That makes sense. Yeah. It's weird on my own journey. Like, I've definitely been without money because of being a recovering addict. There's definitely times where I spent all my money on drugs or booze or trying to chase women or just like any other foolish thing you could think of, really. And the funny thing though is I've always kind of had people looking out for me where like I could get something to eat. I could have these other situations. Like, I'm one of the few people that can probably say that they've been homeless because of their, I shouldn't say few. I'm one of the rarities in the homeless community that's homeless because they chose to be, not because of circumstances at times in my life, really. But I was always able to get some kind of help from people. So it wasn't like I was ever in, I was never stuck in that position. And I really view that like people were put in my life to kind of helped me get out of those situations so I could transition and maybe help other people out, because those were really big character building experiences for me, being pinched. Like even now, I don't really have any of my own money. I've just kind of been existing and rebuilding myself. I'm coming into a position where I'm going to start working. But I also feel like now that I'm in a good space internally and have built a solid foundation, I can actually work and save money and repay some of my debts, and invest in my business too. So it's a cool position to be in.
That is wonderful, and it sounds like a true Piscean experience of life.
Yeah.
Being part of the greater tribe or collective and really interacting in ways that spiritually help you grow.
I was when I was diagnosed as bipolar, which they've removed that diagnosis from me, it pissed me off that I was Pisces, because I was like, even my astrological sign is like bipolar. It's going in opposite directions. What the heck?
Hey, that's the last sign in the chart. That's the lessons you learn at the end.
Oh, I didn't know that, so that's good to know. I'll sit a little taller now. I won't let that go to my ego. No. Did you feel that you were different than others as a child?
Yes. And I was told that my whole life. And yeah, it was hard. I was bullied in school, especially in elementary school, for both being extremely sensitive and also because I was kind of smart, and there were people who would react to that and give me extremely hard times. So, but then and there were usually little guys, and then for every guy that gave me a hard time or pulled the chair out from underneath me or said, things that were denigrating to me, there would be these other sweet little guys over here that would do wonderful things, like in kindergarten, come up to me with a Kleenex and say, Linda, your nose is running. Here's a Kleenex,
Oh.
And there was a sweet little guy named Bobby. He would just come up and look at me and he'd go, hi. And so everything always balanced out. And once I started getting more into the healing arts, I didn't set out to become a quote new age person at all. Oh my gosh, I would get so nervous and scared about kind of coming out of the closet into the world, because I know the world can be really harsh with people who are different like this. Different, so to speak. There are many more people who understand these things now. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've had anybody on here who was like, yeah, I felt completely normal like everybody else. Everybody's kind of been like, I was odd, or they're like, looking back, yeah, I was different.
Right.
I definitely relate to that. I also relate to being the sensitive and like intelligent person. That was my experience until I learned to kind of be act unintelligent, because it was easier for me.
Oh. Hey, whatever works, huh?
Yeah, it worked for not very long, but I kept it up anyhow. Like, what was the first instance that you noticed that you were different? Like, what stands out to you the most, like looking back?
Yes, I can remember a lot of things about when I was 3 and 4 years old that had to do with me sitting out in the garden. And I would listen to the angels singing. Somehow I just knew that was what was going on. I'd be sitting with the flowers on the grass and I'd just be going, like that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So do you have any odd experiences you are willing to discuss?
Oh, yes, we do have these odd lives, don't we? Yes. When I was in my mid-30s, I was over in Laguna and very connected to a lot of people who were a healing presence on the planet. And my partner at the time was intrigued with Terence Mckenna and The Food of the Gods.
It's a good book.
Yes. And so we went into some spiritual experiences. I always say, we didn't do it for fun, we did it for growth, but maybe we should have done some of these things for fun. I've always been kind of a serious soul, except at this point I seem to be able to laugh more. So he would get mushrooms and we would do the set and setting rules for going into a shaman's experience. And with every one of those times, and I think that we did it about 4 or 5 times during the whole 1980s. It's a very serious way we went about it. We would be taken up into spaceships and worked with. That was not anything I ever thought about in life, at that point. It's like, and he would ask me at the end, he'd say, did they come again? And I said, yes. They seemed to be very benevolent, and they would work with our energies.
Oh, wow. Did you do the Terence McKenna heroic dose, the 5 dried grams?
No,
Okay.
I didn't even know what was in those books at the time. I just know we used Timothy Leary's set and setting.
Okay, right on. Yeah, I was just curious. I read a lot of Terence McKenna, so listening to a lot of his stuff.
Yeah.
That's
And
definitely an experience.
yeah. That's part of the amazing awakening that went on the planet, and still continues to go on. And then I had so that was in the 80s, and then in the 90s I had an ayahuasca experience with a group up in Ojai, California. And a really strange thing, I can remember definitely going deep into the earth and feeling that I was Mother Earth, and didn't get sick or anything. We had these minimal doses. But at the end of the group, the shaman who had been going down to Peru to study with the shaman there passed around a beautiful box that had fabric on it. And he said, well, we will pass this around in the silence, and I think you're going to like this. There were about 25 or so of us in the group sitting on the floor. And when the box came around to me, I opened the lid, and there was this beautiful shrunken head. And it's not like the squirrely heads you see that look like they're made out of rubber. And it was just soft and smooth. There was no smell to it. The man had a beautiful mustache in his hair, and there was energy there. And after the box had gone around to our shaman, he said, this is the shaman in Peru who has been guiding us here in America through his groups. He recently passed on, and he wanted his students in America to know him.
Mm.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I consider that one of the most precious moments of my life. It taught me so much. And then as a final afterthought to weird experiences, when I finally got here to Sedona in the early 90s, I was taking a nap one day, and I woke up with a start, and there was this being of white light standing at the edge of my bed. And I called my friend who had been here a long time, and I said, what is this, and what do I need to do? She said, well, just go into a formal meditation and ask it what it wants. So I did, and I heard, I am a Pleiadian light being, and I want to work with your energy. And of course, they're all about love. So I just lied down in the bed, and I was flooded with love. Totally shifted my consciousness. So those are some of the more odd experiences.
Yeah, those all sound really, really intense. I'm glad that you had to have those, not me. I definitely feel like we're all suited for our own odd experiences, and I don't think a lot of people would want mine, but I also don't think that, I mean, I would get through it, I assume, but like hearing it and not being in it, you know what I mean? It's like, oh crap, I would be terrified of that.
Yeah, those were things that stopped for me in 1991. Long time ago. I feel like they were just moments in time that shifted my consciousness and helped me in ways that were very precious.
Yeah, my spiritual awakening was incredibly intense, often like very, very frightening. And don't get me wrong, there was like very, very pure moments of like light and good things. But it's just like so weird to think about now that like I'm actually surprised that I'm relatively like sane and grounded and like um, that I made it through those okay, because it's a lot like when stuff kind of shatters your concept of what reality is, like when you peek
Right.
behind the curtain, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely spiritual awakening. Up at the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, I don't know if they're still doing it, but they would do classes in that because it's always crisis and opportunity and going over to an edge and coming back. And yeah.
That's definitely my story in a nutshell, going over the edge and going down in the Marianas Trench and then like coming out of it. I can remember when I was going through all that, there's always that like saying, oh, they went off the deep end. And I was like, I'm not even in the deep end. I'm out of the pool and I'm in the Marianas Trench. Like I'm past the pool. What superpowers do you possess, or what superpowers would you want?
I don't believe I possess any superpowers. But if I could have a superpower, it would be the ability to wave a magic wand and create peace all over the world so that people could utilize this beautiful place in a better way. But I realize that the polarities are still here for people to learn, and so that's none of my business.
Yeah. Well, that would be a hell of a superpower.
Yeah, I was born 2 days before they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima in Japan.
Mm.
And then at age 10, I was taken by some peace people. My mother introduced me to them, and I went to a film about Hiroshima and saw all the death and destruction there. And I remember when I came home, I thought, I will do everything I can to hold peace, at least in my own life, and encourage it in others. And so I've done different things like that over the years. And I still drive around with a license plate that says, "May peace prevail," and another plate on the front that says, "Imagine," John Lennon's song. So I feel people like ourselves are holding consciousness to balance out some of the hatred in the world. Not that I don't feel sometimes so angry that I have some moments of hatred, but just in general, an energy that helps balance out what's so destructive.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I mean,
Mhm.
in my own personal experience, I used to think like what peace should be. But one of the things that I've noticed is it's like what you said. I have to be peace. I have to be peaceful inside and learn to calm myself down and be peaceful in situations, because that's what creates peace. There can be no external peace until there is internal peace, really. Because I've been in really peaceful situations and I've been at war with myself, and it's like that energetic repercussion of that mindset is what creates all of the stuff, in my opinion,
Mhm.
in one way or another. And as far as like I lost my train of thought.
Well, exactly what you said. Definitely, it's peace comes from within us. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. um so what circumstances do you feel shaped your life?
Well, pretty much everything. Um, I had great love and respect for my dad, even with the different problems he had. He was always motivated to create business and take care of his family. And I looked at that and I thought, I want to be like my dad. I want to have my own business. So there was one point where I think I was probably about 11 years old, and he created this beautiful little desk for me for my room. And it was an odd shaped desk. Of course, it wouldn't just be a square or a rectangle. And then I asked my mom for some stuff that she could give me that related to business. And I would sit at that desk and I would say, okay, when I grow up, I want to do two things. I want to be a teacher and I want to have my own business. And I was sitting there with this little check register and I thought, how do I get business? At 11. So I think I never figured it out at the time. But that really motivated me, having that sense of role models that were successful. And so while I have at times worked for other people, I've had, started my own little business when I was 13. with babysitting and helping, being a housekeeper, helper around the neighborhood. And ever since then, occasionally I would have work with other people so that I could learn from them. But it's always been my own businesses. So that really shaped my motivation for my life.
That's awesome. I always like to hear when people are like so influenced by the people closest to them for positive, because I've said this on other episodes, but like there's so much strength in that because it makes it a tangible, achievable goal in lots of ways. And there's this common mindset of like looking up to these people that are so far out of the stratosphere where you don't see all the hard work behind everything and you don't see the struggles that they have to get where they're at. And it makes it this like unrealistic expectation where if you're not instantly successful with something that you want to throw the towel in because you think it's not for you. And it's like being on the front lines and seeing all the work that people put into stuff is really what builds character. When you were sharing the story about being a business person, it made me think like the only time I've ever been in business is back when I used to sell drugs. I was a horrible business person. I was like my own best customer. But I never paid for anything. So it's kind of like a good thing that I'm not in that business anymore.
Well, another true Piscean, young Piscean experience. I'm so glad your Pisces energy is helping to whirl you in a new direction.
Me too. It's a lot less expensive and I'm able to think more clearly.
Yes.
It is still funny to me. That's actually how I learned how to do like some math because I was never very math minded.
Awesome.
It's just funny to me. So what positive lessons did you learn from your negative experiences?
In general, keep on keeping on. You know, it's, I've had a very challenging life in terms of wanting certain things and getting what I needed instead. And many times wanting to just give up on what I was doing and let it go. And that was usually whenever I was right at the cusp of something opening up tremendously. So I would say that sense of determination, just keep on keeping on. And as spiritual people, we always have that to support us. And so I would always turn to that.
That's definitely been something that I've learned through my own negative experiences is learning that things are going to be okay, that things are happening for a reason, and that I just need to have faith in my ability to overcome and my faith in my my higher power to kind of guide me through the circumstances and give me the strength I need to make it through.
Exactly.
What songs or bands have lyrics that most resonate with you at this moment?
Okay, at this time, I've been really taken by Harry Styles. You know, he used to be in One Direction, the young band, the guy band.
I've heard of the name.
Yes, there's a wonderful video of him on YouTube. He's gone off on his own now, and when I heard the song, I thought, oh, this is awesome. It's called Sign of the Times. And it's really about the polarity of wanting to stay on the earth and do our work here and wanting to get off this crazy planet. It's very heartfelt. And I think a lot of people at times feel that like, why am I still here? You know, very sweet. And then at this point, the Moody Blues have kind of come back from the 60s. I especially like Question and Tuesday Afternoon from Days of Future Past. I just wore out that CD the other day. I always usually have one of those. And that's been kind of a guiding light because the energy of it is so higher consciousness. And I love a lot of the things that happened in the 60s, which to me were a reflection of some of the things that happened back in the 1860s as well. You know, with the transcendental poets and the way they love nature and the universe and the spirit of all, and William Blake, and also Thoreau with his Walden Pond and Emerson and all those guys. So these streams of consciousness that go forward and backward in time and are really talking about the same thing. Some of the things that can help us survive being on this crazy planet.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never heard the thing about the 60s kind of tying up with the 1860s too. I think that that's something I'd like to look into. I've always been fascinated by the 60s, and I used to feel like I was born in the wrong timeline. And now I accept that I'm born in the right timeline, that maybe I just had a previous life in the 60s, which would explain some of my earlier behaviors in life too. So it's like, I really identify with older music more so than a lot of newer stuff for the most part, because I get it more. And I also like how you kind of mentioned that stream of consciousness. It's kind of reflected in other times as well. Because one of the things I found is like, you can tell people that get it, regardless of what time period it is, by the way that they express certain things. Like I could read somebody from like 1100 or whatever, and they could say something. I'm like, oh damn, this dude, like I know what this dude's talking about. And that's like, that's profound, because it's not on like the superficial level of like, why is this guy talking about this or that? It's like, there's such a deep symbolic meaning behind those words that if you have to ask, you'll never know type thing.
Yeah, to me, it's another way of knowing that there's, I feel anyway, a holographic universe or universes, and everything is so interconnected and self-reflexive, and you can, access any of these different timelines and bring something forward that's very helpful to you.
Yeah, I definitely I definitely agree with like the many universe concept. I don't know why, but it feels right to me. Because with almost everything, there's not just one of anything really. So I don't know.
Yeah, I always say I don't know anything, because ultimately we don't. But but these are concepts that have really come to me and helped me over time, just like you. They come to you and they help you out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, worst case scenario, if I believe something that's wrong, it helped me out. So
Exactly. Yeah. I remember when we were spreading my dad's ashes up in Montana, where he had a kind of a cottage or a cabin in the woods with his wife for so many years, and there was a creek going by, and the ashes were there, and I had some osprey feathers I floated. And my mother, I was always the odd girl in the family. She said, "What are you doing with those feathers? Like, is that satanic or something?" I said, "Beautiful water eagle feathers for Dad. He really enjoyed this type of thing." And as his ashes went through my hands, I said to myself, if this is all that it is, once a person dies, these beautiful sparkling pieces of his skeleton, that's enough for me. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can remember when I was younger, thinking about how when I died, it would be cold black and I would be alone, and it terrified the shit out of me. I was like 6 years old when I thought about that. And it's so weird now, like, even though I have belief in something after, it's like, even if not, just existing and getting to experience all this and then going into nothing. Like, first off, I'm not going to know, like, when I die, if that is the case. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, crap, that was the best I ever had. And after, like, so it's like, that's comforting. And at least I got to experience. Like, I don't think that's what it is, but I won't know anyhow. So.
Yeah, I don't either, but it's quite mysterious.
And it's definitely fun to think about. What philosophy, spirituality, or religions do you find most aligned with your understanding? Can you explain them as they apply to you?
The Native American spirituality, which is that deep connection with different realms of energy and light, deep connection with the earth and everything that's here, and also the universe through the stars and the planets and all of that. And I honor their sense of the wheel of time. Like the little swirl in back of me is from the Dene or Navajo culture, and it's called the Navajo Changing Woman, or the Whirling Woman of Change. And so I think they have a real kind of visceral understanding of the energies here on the earth and in the universe.
Mm.
And I've always been captivated by the native cultures. I've never really looked at them as being perfect, nor anything perfect, but just ever since I was a little kid, I would ask my dad to take me out on reservations when we went on trips, and he would humor me. And so I learned a lot about them. And then when it took me 13 years to get my bachelor's degree. And when I went to put together all of the different, because we moved a lot, it was during the Vietnam War, and I worked and had a baby, and my husband was in the Air Force. When we settled and I was able to put all the things together from the junior college experience, I went to Cal State Fullerton and I said, what can I do with all this stuff? And the counselor there said, it gives me chills even today. She said, oh, we have some new majors that have to do with America, and it's American Studies, Women's Studies, and Native American Studies. I said, you're kidding. So I signed up for Native American Studies because I was already doing it on my own. I walked to my car and I thought, I have died and gone to heaven.
Mm.
You know, and I got that degree and people said, you can't do anything with that. So they said, go on and do something more. So I became a counselor, and then always in my counseling over the years, there has been some grain of the Native American information in everything I've done.
Oh, wow.
Very useful.
That's awesome. Yeah, Native American culture has always fascinated me too from an early age. My grandparents would travel out west in the winter to sell gems and minerals, and they would go to like Apache Junction or places like that, and they'd always bring me back these little knickknacks. I can remember being like in second or third grade and asking for like a kachina doll or whatever. Like, I don't think that's the typical second or third grade boys request. Like, everybody else wants G.I. Joes, and I want like a Native American spirit doll or whatever it is.
Probably a past life as a Hopi shaman.
Mm. I could see that in some ways for sure. Like, I have such a deep calling to that kind of stuff. What do you perceive as your life's purpose?
It's to be a part of the greater consciousness that brings in higher consciousness here to the planet, higher vibrations of light, and anchors or roots it on the family, not on the family, on the earth, well, on the family too. Creates a root for it here so that coming generations are able to access that as they continue to grow in their spiritual awakenings. It's like I feel like I'm a seed planter of higher consciousness.
That's a really beautiful way to put it. I like that. What do you need to do to feel that you are working towards that goal?
Really just keep on keeping on. Yeah. And keeping aligned with my soul's purpose and opening up to new things. Like I've just recently opened up to doing some spiritual artwork from the essence of my playful child. You know, I took lessons in watercolor, lessons in portraits, all these different things. And I realized at the end of that, I thought, I don't want to do any of those things. I want to be spontaneous and come from my own heart. And so one of the teachers said, your art looks childlike. She didn't say childish, but I was offended. I thought, childlike art? But then over time I thought, what's wrong with coming from your inner child and expressing something that's directly from them there? So I've been doing energy paintings of people and not being concerned about whether people like it or whatever about it, you know? I'm just at that place where I'm open to the new to continue to bring in the consciousness.
I like when people pretty much answer it with just kind of being who they are is what they need to do to achieve stuff. And in my own journey, connecting with art and all that stuff has been incredibly healing for me. It's been so liberating. And with like the inner child element of it, children are so pure when they create art because they don't have all these different influences from the outside world kind of blocking them from creating stuff. So it's pure. And when you're older, I don't mean to say that older artists don't necessarily have that same purity, but it's also refined in a sense in some ways to where it's not the same. And creating just to create, regardless of other people like it or like not trying to impress people, for me, that's what art is all about. Like, I have so much respect for people that take that approach to it. And I never would downplay anybody's ability to draw or paint something realistically. That takes an incredible amount of talent that I don't have. I also find that incredibly boring, though. Like, if I'm just being honest, we have cameras. We can take a picture of that. Like, show me the emotion behind the tree.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
I know it's kind of like I don't know if that's rude to say or not, but like, I'm not moved by it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not rude. It's just that's your opinion, and we all have them, and everybody's on their own artistic path. And so I feel like people find their own way to whatever really comes from their heart, and then certain people can relate to it and other people can't, and that's okay too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I'm sure that they'll make more money with their art doing what they can do than what I can. So that maybe that's the trade-off. I get to be a snob and not make any money off of it.
Well, enjoy your snobbery.
I will. I'll hinky out when I paint. I'm highfalutin.
Oh, that's cute.
If you had to describe your personal philosophy or condense your life experience into a few words, what would it be? No pressure.
Well, my philosophy is that each person is a unique part of the greater sphere of life. It's almost like a multi-level sphere mandala of beautiful colors, and each color information. And so I feel like everyone has a place in the sphere, and everyone has a reason for being here. And sometimes I'm not the most tolerant person of people who, may make fun of quote, new age people. I'll usually just kind of keep my mouth shut and go, okay, they come from a different point of view. But, and then I might not want to ever see them again. I don't want to put up with them, Do I want to hear that again? But those are good lessons in tolerance and patience, and I think everybody has a place here, and whenever I come from that, I'm the happiest. And personally, to do my best to stay as centered as I can, either, through meditation or a quick moving my energy down to the core of the earth and attaching there, and then bringing it back up and attaching with the universal light. And I think it's important to be able to, in the midst of all the challenges, to be able to really bring the beauty of life to you and to appreciate what's around you and the beauty of people and what you see in their eyes and our animal friends and all of nature. And so that seems to be one of the points about keeping sane, is the ability to connect with nature and the natural world and our own nature.
I find that very beautiful, and I can relate to what you said from my own personal experiences. Who inspires you?
The Dalai Lama. Mm-hmm. And he's here to bring in higher consciousness too, and I love the way he laughs. And he's changing his perception of things too. He used to say, why get angry? But I noticed recently that he's going into be authentic. Let yourself feel and express from those deeper feelings of life. And I don't believe that takes you out of higher consciousness. It's just real. And then you can be in a different alignment to bring in consciousness that goes, It's all, really a balancing act. And I appreciated that he brought that in. He's an awesome guy. And I have such love and respect for my teachers in India, from when I went there and from when many of them used to come to Sedona when they could afford to do that. And I was not into the Hinduism, but I was into the beauty of the intense light they carried. They'll do. And I thought to myself, I can learn from that light. When I told my mom I was going to India, she said, "Are you becoming a Hindu?" Oh, odd child, you know. And I said, no, I learned from their light. And that's exactly what has happened. And so occasionally I will look at a live stream video of Mother Mira. And she's kind of getting weary. And she's been doing this all her life. Wonderful guru. And Amma Karunamai, Rishi Nitya from India, and Ravi Shankar, not the sitar player, but the head of the Art of Living Foundation over there. They were some of my most profound teachers, both here and when I went to India. And I really respect the commitment they have to spending their whole lives bringing in higher consciousness. That's not an easy task, especially with the masses. Wow.
That sounds like you really have a wide breadth of people to pull from in there, especially from like people that you've worked with directly. And I find that to be incredibly profound. I hadn't heard that the Dalai Lama had said that stuff about be authentic, but that's one of the big hangups I have sometimes, like with like positivity or like the new age stuff, is that like it almost bastardizes regular human emotions. And it's like, sometimes you have to express that stuff, because if you suppress it or like hold it in, that's what I did most of my life. That doesn't work out. And
yeah, I feel the same way. And I think a lot of people are moving in that direction of taking away the layers of feeling like you have to somehow be so perfect to be in the healing arts, and just being yourself, being a human being.
Yeah, I definitely find that that's true to my experience. I mean, maybe some people can have light shooting out of every orifice and stay in that situation all the time, but it's not me. It's been like this like phrase I keep going back to over the past month. Like, you keep talking about light shooting out of every orifice. I don't know why, but
I haven't heard that before, but I love it. You know, I had that happen for me for 1 month when I returned from India. Came home, and for a month, nothing bothered me. And I thought, wow, that was good for me to go over there and realign everything. And after a month, I remember reacting to something. I thought, okay, it's wearing off.
It's funny because I've had experiences where I've been like in tune with that for like a period of time, like you're sharing as well. But in my own personal experience, that's also when I've been kind of like the biggest asshole. Because I'm like so blinded by my own concept of myself that like I'm telling everybody else what they need to do, because I'm like lording over them from like up on top of a cloud or whatever.
That spiritual self-righteousness.
Oh yeah. That's exactly what it is.
I am Buddha, watch me shine.
Yeah. What books would you recommend to others, or what books impacted you the most?
Okay, let's see if I have the paper here that shows that. Not sure I do. Ken Casey wrote Return of the Bird Tribes. Ken Casey. And that he predicted the rainbow people coming to the earth. And that's all the rainbow children coming in now, rainbow crystal, platinum children. And it's also people who have the deep connection with the native people without knowing why. And he said these would be, chills, the white people who would have, in effect, a native spirit within them. Native American or indigenous, and with a white skin, to help integrate the wisdom of the Native American people. He wrote that either in the 70s or 80s. I read that in California. That was very impactful and helped me not feel so weird, you know. And let's see, another book is from Jose Arguelles. And he wrote The Mayan Factor. He was so brilliant that I read the book, but I couldn't understand it. I would go and read the summary, the last paragraph at the end of each chapter, and try to take in some energy of it. And after his son died, he wrote Surfers of the Zavuya, which is adventures in interdimensional travel. And again, that came out at a time when this was not something that was being talked about all that much. And so I thought he was very brave, and it really impacted me.
I'll have to check those books out. Is it the first author? Is that the guy who is like part of the Merry Pranksters, or the name is just similar?
I don't know.
Hmm.
Just Ken Casey, Casey.
Okay, I'm thinking of Ken Kesey. I was just curious if it was like a different pronunciation of that. I was like, that's interesting that he wrote that. Like,
I think it was Ken Casey, the paper I had it on from yesterday. I don't have here.
that actually makes more sense than Ken Kesey in lots of ways. Not that he wouldn't have been into that, but I just wanted clarification. So we're at the last little part of it. I don't know if you have a message you want to give to everybody before you do a closing, or if you just want to close it in your own words. But before that, I just want to thank you for taking the time to come on and chat with me. I've really enjoyed it. Also, I forgot to mention this too. If you could plug your website, maybe explain a little bit about the services you offer. I'll put a link in the description as well. So if people are in Sedona, they can stop and say hello and get to interact with you in person.
Yeah, and if you're not in Sedona, you can set up a phone healing experience as well, or Skype. I Skype people and do healing. My website is called SedonaSacredWays.com. And I still stick with the word Reiki because that's universal life energy. And it's not that I'm old fashioned, it's just a lot of people recognize it, but all the energies for healing are really the same. So I do the Reiki energy healing, hearing from a distance. I do intuitive readings, chakra clearing and balancing, and then this new artwork, which is to reflect back to you what comes in spontaneously without any kind of rules. I just sit down and start to paint. And there are always messages there and support for a person's movement forward. So that's what I'm up to.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I know that I enjoyed my experience with you a lot. I would definitely recommend other people to try it out.
Thanks, Ross. And I really appreciate this opportunity to have shared all of these experiences. It's been really precious for me because it gave me a chance to look back on 42 years of healing arts and see where I've been and to see how it all pulls together. And it's given me a lot of energy to move forward.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, I'm grateful that I'm able to give this opportunity for you to share that as well, because I really wanted to create a platform for people to talk about experiences like this. And it's been almost a year since I started doing this. And it's cool to see where I've been, because when I started, I didn't feel comfortable talking. Then I didn't feel comfortable interviewing people once I got comfortable talking. Mm-hmm. And now my problem is I don't know how the hell to shut up. It's cool to like come to that circle. Yeah, if you want to.
Aren't you glad I didn't say shut up, Ross?
Sometimes I feel like I need it though.
We talked about that before we actually recorded. There was one time when it came into my mind as we were doing this, I heard shut up, Ross. And then I said, in my mind, I love you, Ross. And just went back over to balance it out. And I do believe that love is a balm that balances everything out. That's probably my parting energy to send out to everybody. Lots of love, and I have such deep appreciation for the indigos like yourself and the people that you know and work with and who are listening to this. And there are probably some crystal, rainbow platinum people as well. I have such profound appreciation that you're on the planet and that you're picking up where we're going to be leaving off in the future. I'm a golden indigo. There were wonderful people who came before the golden indigos to bring in higher consciousness, like those streams of consciousness we talked about. And I know it's not an easy planet to be on, but I feel so heartened by the future knowing you're all here. It's hard to step up to the plate, but you're doing it. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm grateful for you.
Don't believe. Don't follow. Do not consume. Do not watch. Largely what I'm talking about here is reclaiming experience. This is what's been taken from us. It's a self-advancing, self-expanding, self-defining process, and it takes no prisoners.
The real world isn't a spiritual world, it isn't a material world, it isn't an empty world, it isn't a solid world. It's simply